The freezing pre-dawn air bit at my skin as I carried 80 pounds of groceries up the icy driveway toward my parents' house at 6 in the morning. While their grand dining table easily seated 8 people, every single holiday required me to haul a rusty, heavy folding table out from the damp garage to cram 14 relatives into one stuffy room. I spent 7 long hours brining the turkey, rolling out homemade dough, chopping mountains of vegetables, and ironing pristine linens before anyone else even opened their eyes. Before we continue, if you want to hear more raw personal stories like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button right now. By noon, the house erupted with the deafening voices of aunts, uncles, and cousins who immediately took their seats like demanding guests at a 5-star resort. I tied a faded linen apron around my waist, instantly slipping into my familiar routine of refilling water glasses, clearing soiled salad bowls, and sprinting back into the scorching kitchen. Meanwhile, my father sat comfortably at the head of the table holding a ice-cold beer, resting his hands peacefully on the polished mahogany wood. He had never prepared a meal in his entire life or wondered who washed the plate resting directly in front of him. The emotional cruelty inside my family was never loud or dramatic, which was precisely why outsiders could never spot the deep toxicity hiding beneath the surface. It always arrived right before dessert, wrapped up neatly as playful family humor, while everyone sat together with their glasses raised in celebration. I stood quietly near the kitchen doorway holding a heavy stack of greasy porcelain plates in my exhausted arms, knowing exactly what was coming next. My uncle asked a routine question about hospital shifts, prompting my father to lean back in his chair with a massive smirk aimed at the crowd. "Well, you all know how things turned out with my 2 daughters, my father announced, pausing with practiced comedic timing to captivate his attentive audience. One daughter became a brilliant surgeon, and the other one became a simple waitress. All 14 people at the long table burst into loud, easy laughter, treating the sharp insult like a beloved family joke that everyone looked forward to hearing year after year. A cousin snorted loudly into his drink, while my father stared directly down the table at me, visibly proud of his humiliating performance. I stood there in my stained apron, forcing a fake smile while allowing the cruel punchline to land without saying a single word to defend myself. I had listened to those exact same words delivered in that identical mocking tone for 10 straight years. Every single time he spoke them, another small piece of my dignity was quietly stripped away. My hands remained steady as I placed the heavy dishes onto the granite counter, reminding myself that I only needed to hold my composure together for a few more hours before I could finally escape. Growing up in that household meant living under an invisible scoreboard that constantly measured your total value as a human being based on achievement. The refrigerator door was reserved exclusively for my older sister, Sloane, completely covered in her perfect report cards, honor roll certificates, and sparkling gold stars. My own academic marks were completely average, and in our home, being average meant you simply did not exist on the wall of pride. Sloane was 3 years older and followed a golden path straight into medical school, while my parents bragged to strangers. While my sister earned public praise, I was naturally gifted at things that could never be framed or displayed on a cold kitchen wall. I knew how to read human emotions in a split second, manage chaotic situations under pressure, and bring genuine comfort to people who were hurting inside. Whenever the harsh judgments in the living room became too painful to bear, I would sneak down the back hallway to my grandmother Vera's warm kitchen. She never asked about my test scores, handing me a wooden spoon and welcoming me alongside her stove. I was 12 years old when my grandmother caught me weeping after a grueling parent-teacher meeting, where my name was spoken like a massive disappointment. She wiped her flour-covered hands on a rag, pulled me close, and explained that a job is merely what you do for income, not who you are inside. It took me over 20 years to truly grasp that priceless lesson, but on that painful day, her gentle words gave me a safe space to breathe. Now, my grandmother was 84 years old and slipping away from us. Over a year ago, doctors confirmed that my grandmother was rapidly sliding into severe dementia, leaving her clarity unpredictable from one moment to the next. On her good days, she was completely sharp, but on her bad days, she frequently confused me with my own mother. I endured the relentless disrespect from my parents solely because I made a quiet vow to protect my grandmother while she could still recognize my face. Leaving that toxic house meant abandoning her, and my father secretly knew that bond was the only tether holding me back. What my family never bothered to learn was that I managed the entire floor at an elite downtown restaurant that required reservations months in advance. I directed a chaotic dining room of 90 guests, managed 11 employees, understood complex culinary operations, and earned a very comfortable living entirely on my me. I bought my own vehicle, covered my own mortgage, and slept peacefully at night without needing validation from my parents. I did not return home to seek their approval, but strictly to care for the frail woman humming in the adjoining bedroom. My mother tapped her fork against her glass, demanding total silence from the room to deliver her predictable annual holiday speech to the family. She proudly recited Sloane's latest medical achievements from memory, boasting about her prestigious residency, while all the relatives nodded in energetic approval. To Sloane, my mother declared loudly, raising her wine glass high into the air as the entire room echoed the exact same toast in loud unison. Across the crowded room, I noticed my sister's hand shaking violently as she lifted her glass, setting it down without sipping. For the very first time in my life, I looked past my sister's flawless reputation and noticed severe exhaustion hiding behind her empty eyes. I retreated into the dim kitchen to slice the pumpkin pie, mentally calculating everything in the house that existed purely because of my personal effort. The golden turkey, the seasoned stuffing, the rich gravy, and the hot rolls were all created by my hands while my mother collected the credit. I was also the only person who organized my grandmother's daily medication and managed her ongoing healthcare needs. Standing at the counter with the pie server in my hand, I listened to the booming laughter echoing from the dining room as my father repeated his punchline. A heavy realization settled deep inside me, forcing me to question why being useful to everyone else made me feel entirely invisible within my own family. I carried the dessert plates back to the table with a trained professional smile, carefully concealing the intense emotional pain rising to the surface. Shortly after, I carried a warm slice of pie into my grandmother's peaceful bedroom. Her eyes lit up with beautiful clarity the moment I stepped inside, instantly recognizing me without a single second of hesitation or mental confusion. She looked at the pie, glanced up at my eyes, and asked if I had cooked the entire feast all by myself again. I tried to deflect her concern with a cheerful joke, but she reached out and firmly grasped my chin, just like she used to do when I was young. Vera looked directly into my eyes and asked if I was truly happy or just being used. Her blunt question pierced straight through my emotional defenses, leaving me standing in total silence because I could never bring myself to lie to her. She squeezed my hand gently, telling me that I did not need to give her an answer tonight, but that we both already knew the truth. Later that evening, a cousin casually demanded that I fetch her more coffee cream, treating me like a hired servant working the party. I automatically complied out of instinct, but deep within my chest, something fundamental finally shattered. A few minutes later, I mentioned to my father that my employer was expanding and had officially offered me an executive partner position with ownership shares. He dismissed my life-changing news in less than 2 seconds, instantly pivoting the conversation back to my sister's medical career without acknowledging my success. In that quiet moment, I realized that no amount of personal achievement would ever earn me respect at their table, because the entire dynamic was rigged from the very beginning. My presence there was never valued, only exploited for convenience. While walking down the hallway toward the back bedrooms, I overheard my parents speaking in hushed tones about placing my grandmother into a nursing facility. My father casually stated that I could pack up her entire life because I had unlimited free time on my hands. They were actively planning to remove the only person who truly loved me, and they had assigned me the labor without consulting either of us. I immediately confronted my mother privately at the sink, asking why she had arranged such a massive decision in secret. My mother smiled casually and remarked that my schedule was flexible, and that I was simply better suited for domestic labor than anyone else. In her eyes, my time carried zero financial worth because of my job, while my sister's time as a doctor was far too precious to waste. My endless devotion was never appreciated, but rather viewed as a convenient tool to be utilized whenever necessary. Later that night, my grandmother called me into her room and handed me a worn tin box filled with decades of handwritten family recipes. She pressed the heavy metal box into my hands, explaining that she wanted me to possess her most cherished treasure while her mind remained clear. I stared down at the faded handwriting on the cards, realizing that true family love is built on mutual respect rather than titles and pride. I closed the tin, kissed her soft forehead, and made the final decision to walk away from that toxic environment forever. If you enjoyed this emotional story, please click the video showing on your screen right now to watch another powerful narrative.